Hello everyone, it's Miss Angela from the Fort Worth Public Library. Welcome back to the Fort Worth Nature Center's Discovery Club Storytime. This week we are talking about owls. Can you make a sound like an owl? Woo-woo! And can you find two owls hiding in my home library? There's one on my shelf, and there's one on my shirt. Our song today is an echo song. It's going to be kind of like the alligator song. I'll sing first, and then you sing after me, and that's how we'll do the whole thing. You ready? Look out for an owl. One of these days, look up and see, a wise old owl sitting in a tree. He'll look at you, and he'll look at me. Those two big eyes, they don't scare me. One of these nights, when raindrops fall, he'll give a hoot, he'll give a call. Part of musical development for children is learning to sing independently and in rhythm. Echo songs help them to do both by teaching listening and mimicking skills. Now we're going to move to our story, which is Good Night Owl by Pat Hutchins. And I'd like to thank Macmillan for letting us read this story. There's an animal on the cover of the book. That's the front. What do you think it might be? An owl? Good Night Owl by Pat Hutchins. Owl tried to sleep. I want you to do the animal sounds along with me for this story, okay? So our first one is going to be bees. The bees buzzed. You say that? Buzz, buzz. An owl tried to sleep. The squirrel cracked nuts. Crunch, crunch. Crunch, crunch. An owl tried to sleep. The crows croaked. Caw, caw. Can you say that? Caw, caw. And owl tried to sleep. The woodpecker pecked. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. Can you do it? Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. An owl tried to sleep. The starlings chittered. Twit, 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 twit. Twit, 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 twit. An owl tried to sleep. The jays screamed. Ark, 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 ark. An owl tried to sleep. The cuckoo called. Cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. An owl tried to sleep. The robin peeped. Pip, 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 pip. An owl tried to sleep. The sparrows chirped. Cheep, 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 cheep. An owl tried to sleep. The doves cooed. Cru-cru, 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 cru-cru. An owl tried to sleep. Now we're going to do them all. The bees buzzed. Buzz, buzz. The squirrel cracked nuts. Crunch, crunch. The crows croaked. Caw, caw. The woodpecker pecked. Rat-a-tat, rat-a-tat. The starlings chittered. Twit, 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 twit. The jays screamed. Ark, ark. The cuckoo called, cuckoo, cuckoo. The robin peeped, pip, pip. The sparrows chirped, cheep, cheep. The doves cooed, crow, crow. And Owl couldn't sleep. Then darkness fell, and the moon came up, and there wasn't a sound. Everyone is quiet. Owl screeched, screech, 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 and woke everyone up. The end. Great listening, and thanks for doing those animal sounds along with me. Books with repeated refrains like this one, "And Owl tried to sleep," are great for early literacy because even pre-readers can read along with the story. So if you have one like that at home, try having your pre-reader say the repeated refrain along with you. Or you can re-watch this video and say, "And Owl tried to sleep," together with me. Now I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Michael at the Nature Center, who will tell you a lot more about owls. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Discovery Club this week. I want to thank Miss Angela at the Fort Worth Public Library for sharing that story, Owl Moon. It's definitely one of my favorites. So hopefully y'all enjoyed that time, and we appreciate your partnership and teaming with the Fort Worth Public Library. So now what we're going to do is talk a little bit more about owls. So the things we're going to talk about today are what an owl is as far as what group it fits into. We're going to talk about some of the characteristics of an owl, what allows it to be active at night. We'll talk about that, what that is called. We're going to go over some of the calls and show you some pictures of the owls. So that'll be towards the end. But before that, we'll talk about the benefit of owls and why they're so important to us. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. So we'll go ahead and get started. Now, owls are birds, and there's one main thing that separates birds from all the other groups, such as amphibians, reptiles, fish, and birds. Can you name that one main trait? Better question is, what makes a bird a bird? And if you said feathers, you are correct. Feathers is what makes a bird a bird. In fact, I have a wing. Now, before I go further and talk about this wing and the feathers, I want to make two things known. Number one, I did not kill, harm, or hurt this bird to get this wing or any of the parts that you're going to see. I didn't harm them, I didn't kill them, or put them in any danger at all. Sometimes we find animal parts, so we use them for educational purposes. So we do not hurt or harm or kill any animals just to get these parts. The second thing I want you to understand is it's illegal to have these feathers and then some of the other things I'm going to show you without a federal permit. Now, I said earlier in our alligator program, we have a permit through the Texas Parks and Wildlife that allows us to keep these animals and animal parts. Well, for birds, we have a federal permit with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that gives us the permission to use animals for educational programs, or particularly birds for animal programs, and parts such as feathers, feet, beaks, and so forth. So I wanted you to know those two things, that we have our permits and they're up to date, and we didn't harm these animals. So I just want to make sure you know that. Now, birds do have feathers. This actually is a wing from an owl, actually more specifically a barn owl, B-A-R-N, barn owl. So feathers are very, very important. This allows them to fly. They're very lightweight. So if you're going to fly, you want to be light as possible. So that's where the term or phrase comes, light as a feather, because they're so they don't weigh very much. These feathers have a main stem in the middle called a rachis. Can you say rachis? Great. And then all these little barbs of these feathers that come off of it, and they can be moved and manipulated and get messed up like that. But on each one of these little barbs are little hooks. And then a bird uses its beak and it'll grab it with their beak. That's called preening. That's P-R-E-E-N-I-N-G, preening. And those little hooks come back and they get connected, each one of those little hooks. So the feather looks good again. So they can't go to the barber and get their feathers fixed. So they have to do it themselves. So that's preening. So birds are covered in feathers. All birds have feathers, even penguins and so forth. So that's what makes them a bird. Now, owls are a special type of bird called a bird of prey, or also called a raptor. Now, raptor comes from a Latin word rapare, which means to grip or to grasp, to plunder. So owls, hawks, eagles, falcons, all those types of birds are called birds of prey. Bird of prey means a bird that actively hunts its own live food using 3 special adaptations. Great eyesight, they have a hooked beak, and they have sharp talons. So that's what makes a bird of prey. You got to have those 3 characteristics, and you have to actively hunt live food. There are predatory birds like herons and egrets, but they don't have those features that I just mentioned. And let's talk about each one of them. So in order to be able to hunt and find your food, you have to have really good eyesight. Now I'm going to show you a skull of a raptor. Let's go ahead and show you an owl. Okay, so this is a skull of an owl. See those large eyes? Now, if you can join me and make a fist, make a fist, and your fist is about the same size as a skull of a raptor or a bird of prey. But if you look at their eye sockets, where their eyes go, their eye sockets are about the same size as ours. However, our heads are bigger, and some of us, like me, have bigger heads, right? So having the same size eye sockets as us, but smaller heads, it's really, really unusual. Now, imagine if this skull, if we were to make it as big as my head, okay, and make it proportional, so if they had the same size as head as us, their eyes would be about the size of a softball. Imagine having an eye like this. So they see exceptionally well. In fact, raptors have been known to see about as far as 5 times as far as we can see. So as they're hunting, they're flying in the sky looking for food, they can see really well. Also, they have something in their eye called a fovea. You have one too. And what happens is, if everybody put your finger in front of you, and everything looks clear, right? But as you bring that finger closer to your face, it starts getting blurry, and your eyes kind of get crossed over, and you can't see. It's your ability to focus on objects. Well, they have them, and they have multiple ones in their eyes, so they can actually focus in on objects a whole lot better. So they can see farther, they can focus on objects a whole lot better. So that's the first characteristic of a bird of prey: excellent eyesight. Second is a hooked beak. Now, birds don't have teeth. You can see inside of this is a replica. This is not a real skull. This is a fake skull, man-made skull of a great horned owl. Birds don't have teeth. Not having teeth allows them to be very lightweight, so that's why they don't have them. So they have to cut their food in small pieces and swallow it whole. So having this hooked beak allows it to tear its food up in small pieces, manageable pieces, so that when it swallows it, it has no problem with that. So a hooked beak is another feature of a bird of prey. So let me go ahead and show that again. You can kind of see a nice curve there. Okay, so great eyesight, a hooked beak, and the last thing are talons. Okay, talons. This is a foot from a great horned owl. You can see the feathers. On owls, their feathers come all the way down to their digits, their toes there. On hawks, it's just skin. So just an FYI. But these sharp nails here, these talons are very sharp, and also the grip is very powerful for a bird of prey. So that's where, as I said earlier, that's where raptor comes from, the Latin word rapare, which means to grip or to grasp. And they can grab their food, their prey species, hold it down, and then with that hooked beak, they tear it up in small pieces and then they swallow it. So that's what a bird of prey is. It's a bird that actively hunts its own live food using great eyesight, a hooked beak, and powerful talons. So that's a raptor. Now let's transition, talk specifically about owls, that type of raptor. Now, raptors are active, well, throughout the day. or at night, depending on what type of raptor you're talking about. But there are two types of raptors. There's diurnal, okay? Those are raptors that are active during the daytime. Your hawks, your falcons, eagles, and things like that. And then you have raptors that are nocturnal, and those are raptors that are active at night, like your owls. So nocturnal means active at night. Diurnal means active during the day. Now, hawks and owls are adapted to when they hunt. So, and their lifestyle as far as getting food. Now, this skull here is a hawk. This skull here is an owl. Now, what would allow him to hunt during the daytime? Well, if you look on this skull here, see these plates here? Those act like a visor or like a set of shades. So whenever they're flying high in the sky and the sun's blaring, that big old sun is blaring in the sky and they're flying by, those little bones right there allow it to shield off the sun. So they're active during the day. Owls, they're active at night. They don't have to worry about the sun. However, they still do have those little bones there, but they're modified because they don't need that. They're hunting in the evening, so they don't need to block out the sun. So it's really cool how hawks and owls and raptors in general are adapted to day or night based on their structural, how their body was made. So that's pretty cool, right? So that allows them to hunt at night, hunting during daytime, hunt during night. Now, owls hunt at night, as we said, so there's a couple of things that they have to do. Number one, imagine you're playing hide and seek and you don't want to be caught. You got to be quiet, right? Well, owls are quiet too. In fact, whenever they fly, now you're not going to be able to see this very well. Oh yeah, you will. Look at all those little hooks you see on the edge of that feather. All those little hooks allow the owl to fly quietly. What happens is all those little bitty barbs, as the bird is flapping its wings, it makes sound waves, and these sound waves can go out. Like when I clap, it makes a loud sound. Well, when it flaps its wings, all those little barbs, you see, little hooks, if you will, create sound waves. But those sound waves are so small, they don't have time to collect with all the other little sound waves, so they just kind of just go out into the air. As opposed to when I clap, all those sound waves get trapped right here and make that loud sound. So when they're flapping their wings, you can't hear them, so they can sneak up on their prey. They have excellent eyesight. There's components to their eyes that allow them to see really well with the absence of light. So we have those too, but they have way more than we do. So they are totally adapted to hunting at night because they're quiet and they can see exceptionally well. So that's what makes them nocturnal and a really good nocturnal animal and very effective. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about are the benefits of owls. Why are owls so important? And raptors in general. Well, owls and raptors tell us a lot about our habitat and our ecosystems. If there are owls and hawks hunting in a particular area, what does that mean? Well, that means there's food around. There's mice, there's squirrels, birds, and all the animals, lizards and snakes and so forth that they like to eat. So if the habitat is good enough to support all the prey species that it eats, like the mammals and the birds and the herps, the reptiles and amphibians and so forth, if there's enough of that food around, they're going to find it. And if they're flying around hunting that food and they're staying in that area, they're nesting in that area, that's a good sign. That's an indicator of a healthy habitat. So we actually learn a lot from raptors by viewing them, just simply viewing them. And that's why it's important. People go bird watching and they report what they find, and they take a log of it and they enter data, and it shows where they are. And it's important because it tells us what kind of habitats they like and that they're doing really well. So in this session, we learned about what an owl is. It's a bird, which means it's covered in feathers. We talked about the different characteristics of owls, which makes them birds of prey, which is a bird that actively hunts. It's live food using great eyesight, powerful talons, and a hooked beak, so when it's eating its prey. We say that they see extremely well. So those are those characteristics of raptors. Then we talked about being nocturnal and the features you need. So being quiet and also seeing very well. And also they hear well too, and we didn't talk about that. In fact, some owls have an ear up here and an ear down here. And it may sound silly, but it allows them to hear everything here and everything down here. So whenever you see an owl do this, he's basically getting all the sounds and triangulating and trying to find out where that prey is. So that would make them really good nocturnal hunters. And then we talked about the benefits, you know, what we learned from owls. We learned about how healthy our habitats are. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you some footage of some pictures we've captured of owls and play some audio. And if the audio doesn't work, I'll jump in and make some calls for you so that you can hear what they sound like. So let's do that right now. Hello everyone, I want to introduce you to our eastern screech owl. This owl was brought to us by a wildlife rehabber. A wildlife rehabber is someone who takes in injured animals and tries to nurse them back to health. If they cannot fix the injury and they can find a place for the animal to live and perform educational programs, that's what they shoot for. And that's what happened with this owl here. It had some trauma, some injury to its right eye, and the rehabber couldn't fix it. So they can't release it in the wild because he can't see as well. So they contacted us and we gladly took her in. So that's why we have this screech owl, because she cannot be released in the wild. Imagine you having one eye. You can't really judge distances very well. Your field of vision, what you can see, is limited. So that's why they can't release her in the wild, and that's why we have her. Now, while we have her, we will use her for educational purposes. We'll go visit libraries, schools, and community events and share about owls and the importance of owls, and allow for people to get a safe, close look at one of these spectacular birds up close. Now, as I said earlier, we do have permits, a license, if you will, to have this animal. We have federal permits that allow us to have birds of prey. We actually have two. We have this owl here, and we also have a red-shouldered hawk at the time as well. So we are allowed to have these two birds strictly because they cannot be released in the wild, and we're using them for educational purposes. So we talked about the three characteristics of owls that birds of prey that allow them to hunt live food: great eyesight, hooked beaks, and powerful talons. Well, this bird has those things as well. We talked about the ability to be nocturnal and hunt at night, and those feathers for sure can do that. A couple other features I wanted to share about. If you watch an owl, you'll notice these, and hawks and eagles and all the birds, they turn their heads around a lot. And the reason for that is their eyes are fixed. Now, I showed you that skull. There's not really much room for that eye to have muscle attachment and things like that. So it has to have the ability to see around it. So what allows it to do that? Well, in their neck, they have a lot of flexibility because they have twice as many bones as we do in their neck. They have roughly 14. So that gives them that flexibility to turn their head around. Now they can't turn it all the way around, and you're seeing her do that. She's turning her head around, but she can turn it about 3/4 of the way around. So she can actually look from side to side, turn and even look backwards so she can see behind her. So that's a pretty important characteristic and trait to have if you cannot move your eyes. If you and I want to look to side, we just kind of move our eyes and so forth. Well, she can't do that. So that's why she moves her head around, jerks it around really fast. And right now there's lots of birds that are singing right now, so she's very curious and just looking around. Also, this is a new exhibit for her, place to stay. So she is still getting used to it. Now you can see, hopefully you can see that good eye right there. That's on your left there. Another cool thing about this bird that allows them to survive, we talked about being nocturnal and silent flight, but also the coloration. Now, screech owls come in different phases, if you will. Phases, also another word for color. This is a gray phase. There's also a red phase. So this is a gray phase, and the coloration of its feathers resemble bark on a tree. So as I said earlier, or maybe I did say earlier, when I walked in, she was very tall. She looked very tall and skinny, like a branch. So when she's sitting in a tree during the day, she can actually resemble a branch or a twig from that tree, and allows her to blend in and camouflage. Right now she's a little puffed up because it's a little cool. There's a little breeze coming in, so puffing up those feathers allow it to trap in the warmth so that she can stay warm. So that's why she's in that posture right now. So that's a little bit about our owl. I want to introduce you to her. So when you come and visit us at the Nature Center, when we're open, you can come to the Visitor Center and see her on exhibit. Or if we come to your local library, local school, community event, you'll see her there as well. So this is our Eastern Screech Owl, and we're excited for you to meet her and see her even closer and in person at some point in time. Well, that concludes our Discovery Club for this Friday. Thank you for tuning in. I'm hoping that you learned a little bit about owls, get a better appreciation for them. Appreciate Miss Angela once again for that story time from the Fort Worth Public Library. Appreciate that. And the images you saw and the owl calls you heard, hopefully you enjoyed that. And now you can be paying more attention in your backyard. Maybe you'll hear one of those screech owls or other owls in your backyard or around the places that you visit often. And then lastly, hopefully you enjoyed visiting with our screech owl that we have here at the Nature Center. So until next week, I hope you have a great day, great rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you next Friday. Have a great day, great week. Bye-bye, guys.